Hamas has always declared its intention to kill all Jews living in Israel. It never hid its genocidal wishes and ambitions. It made clear that any Jew living in Israel, from babies to the oldest of seniors, was fair game for murder. Before Israel created walls and barriers around Gaza, Hamas and Islamic Jihad sent wave after wave of suicide bombers into Israel, blowing up schools, buses, supermarkets, kindergartens, killing defenseless civilians from babies to the oldest of old adults. If Gaza is an open-air prison, as many claim in order to defame Israel, then it is an open-air prison created by Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and all of their supporters and apologists. Hamas and Islamic Jihad apologists, the apologists for the slaughterers of Jews, use all kinds of excuses and justifications for Hamas killing Jewish babies, old people, defenseless civilians, men, women, and children. It is not necessary to like Israel, to support its government, or to approve of Israel's actions in Gaza or anywhere else in order to recognize that it is Hamas and Islamic Jihad that chose to murder, kidnap, and rape Israeli civilians, beheading and burning alive babies and children, and that they use the civilian population of Gaza as their human shields. If it were not for the deep pathological hatred for Jews that exists throughout the world, there would be no Palestinian-Arab conflict with Israeli Jews. Before there was an Israel, there were massacres of the Jews living in what was then the British-controlled territory of Palestine, including the Hebron massacres of 1929, massacres in Jerusalem and elsewhere. It was the Jews of Palestine that already were the ones called Palestinian when the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, an ally of Hitler, supported Hitler's genocide against the Jews and wanted it extended to Palestine, to British-controlled Palestine. Hitler and his Jew-hating allies raped, tortured, and murdered over 6 million Jews, almost all of the Jews of Europe. Shortly after the war, the demonic Jew-hating Hitler started, with Europe still in ruins and over 70 million people killed. The war against the Jews continued. No sooner did Jews finally have their one small country, the newfound UN-recognized state of Israel, a concerted effort was made to destroy the small country. Israel was founded in 1948 and was immediately attacked. Israel won the war, and it has endured an over 70-year history of constant attacks, war, terrorism, and every effort made to destroy the country and annihilate its Jewish population. The Nakba of the Jews of the Middle East and North Africa, in which Jews were driven out, persecuted, and forced to leave from countries across the Middle East and North Africa to Israel, where they and their descendants now form the majority population of Israel, is never discussed. There are reasons why there are no longer Jews in Libya, Egypt, Syria, Lebanon, Iraq, Algeria, Yemen, and elsewhere in the Middle East and North Africa, even though they were living in those lands for thousands of years. Grievances and injustices, past or present, real or not, must no longer be used as the excuse to murder and deliberately attack and harm Israeli civilians or any civilians. The genocidal war against Israeli Jews greatly harms both Palestinian Arab and Israeli civilians. The outrage by supporters and apologists for Hamas and Islamic Jihad about Palestinian Arab casualties is outrageous in and of itself, in that if they did not support Hamas and Islamic Jihad, rapists, torturers, kidnappers, and murderers, perhaps thousands of civilians on both sides would not be dead. It is heartbreaking to see the civilian casualties in Israel and in Gaza. None of this was necessary, but all of it was completely predictable. Everyone knew that if Hamas and Islamic Jihad and their supporters and their got their hands on Jewish civilians, the Jews would be slaughtered. It was less known that not only are they murderers, not only are they cowards that hide behind and punish their own civilian populations, but that they would even murder their own civilians. The abuse, the rape, the kidnappings, and enslavement of helpless Jewish women, the beheadings, torture, murder of babies, children, old people, defenseless men and women was entirely predictable. Hamas and Islamic Jihad, like ISIS, show the depths of depravity which can be reached by these rapist murderers. The only way to prevent further escalation is for there to be a ceasefire and the immediate release of all hostages with no preconditions. All of Hamas and Islamic Jihad must leave Gaza and go to one of the countries with demented leaders that support them with open arms and already are home to the leadership of Hamas and Islamic Jihad. The leaders of Hamas and Islamic Jihad live like spoiled kings while the people of Gaza suffer. Even later, if they enter voluntarily and Gaza is finally free from the oppression of these hate-filled, violent, demonic fanatics, Israel can do what they can in order to bring the Hamas and Islamic Jihad war criminals to justice. But for now, the priority must be to liberate Gaza from Hamas and Islamic Jihad by having them leave voluntarily in order to avoid a full-scale invasion by Israel in order to force them out. That is the only way to protect the civilians of Gaza. Anyone that really cares about the civilians of Gaza would do everything possible to avoid full-scale war. They would also understand that Hamas and Islamic Jihad, after raping, torturing, kidnapping, shooting defenseless people, burning alive, beheading, and then using Gaza's civilians as human shields, cannot be allowed to remain in Gaza so that the whole vicious cycle continues over and over. There's no going back now. Hamas and Islamic Jihad, just like ISIS, must not be in control of any territory. When they are gone, Gaza must be rebuilt, and the people of Gaza must be offered a better future with peace and prosperity instead of war and suffering. The larger conflict will be resolved when people see each other as human beings first. Bridges between people must be built. Israel, Gaza, the world needs peace, courage, compassion, and kindness.